Hi, my name is Amanda Panacea, and you're listening to the Healer Revolution podcast. This is a community for self-healers, biohackers, practitioners, and any other helping professionals. You're in the right place if you're seeking conversations about how pain becomes passion, the connection between physical, energetic, mental, and our spiritual self, finding your body's ancient wisdom, the latest biohacking technologies, clinical research, and if you just want to nerd out about complex biochemistry and quantum physics. But this is also for entrepreneurs who seek infinite abundance and a supportive community. So pour a cup of King coffee or Sisters tea and let's join the revolution. Welcome to the Healer Revolution podcast. I am Amanda Panacea, and today I am really thrilled to introduce Dr. Bob Rakowski. He is a renowned functional medicine practitioner with over 3 decades of experience transforming lives through holistic and an integrative approach. He is a true pioneer in the field with expertise spanning chiropractic, kinesiology, clinical nutrition, and even registered nursing. His unique journey really brings depth and understanding to the human body that I really have not seen a lot of integrative functional doctors coming forth with. However, in this episode, we take a deep dive into the incredible healing power of Reishi mushroom. Dr. Bob shares why Reishi is a cornerstone in his practice and how Organo's Reishi products specifically contain a superfood and has patented process that is able to span from immune modulation to nutrition to managing stress and inflammation, and why Reishi is more than just a mushroom. I have personally seen more improvement in my health when I found Reishi specifically in the King coffee product that Organo has. And then later on, finding Dr. Bob's HPA Access Reset, which includes hourly Reishi spores and a few other ingredients that totally helped me come down from a very stressful time period in my life, not once, but twice. And so I am very inspired by Dr. Bob. I'm so excited to have him on the podcast because he has such a way of words and ability to educate all sorts of different people and is really just a game changer in the modern functional medicine sphere. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Healer Revolution podcast. I am really stoked today because I get to sit down and talk with the Dr. Bob Rakowski. Hi, Dr. Bob. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, you are very welcome. It is my distinct honor. So thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. So I'm familiar with you because of Reishi. You are a master Reishi educator, and you've been using this in your practice for a very long time with a variety of different ailments, anything from athletes to who want to perform better, all the way to people who have terminal cancer. So I'm really excited to sit down and see why is this herb, this medicinal mushroom, so incredible for so many things.
Well, maybe we take a step back before we go into the herb itself and actually figure out why are people so challenged today.
Yeah.
We go back decades, and malnutrition is the #1 cause of death on planet Earth. 2020, they came out with the Global Nutrition Report. They said every single country on planet Earth suffers malnutrition. International Journal of Sports Nutrition 20 years ago published that about 99.9% of people walking around are deficient in one critical vitamin or mineral. So what that means very, very simply is that no one has ideal nutrient status. And then you take an herb like Reishi, which has been used by humans for over 5,000 years, have all the fabulous 50, all the vitamins, minerals, amino acids, proteins, carbohydrates, fat, fiber, and water in doses that make a difference to human health, 430 other unique molecules, 79 of which are antimicrobial and have been even proven to block replication of the HIV virus. Powerful stuff. So no one will ever be hurt by this. And since everybody's deficient, you put something good in your body. And by the way, we put it in coffee and tea, so people can easily get it multiple times every day. They're going to get better for it.
Yeah, I didn't even think about the fact that reishi had so many nutritional benefits. I was thinking of like the immune modulation properties, the antimicrobial, but explain how does reishi contain fat, fiber, all of these molecules that we're deficient in?
Sure. So it's considered the top superfood on the planet. There's a couple different websites, superfood for superhealth.com, superfood evolution. Superfood is not a scientific distinction. It's a title.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
when you have a superior nutrient density, that's really how you get to that categorization. And then you start looking at all the other things that are within it. So, it's a mushroom. And interestingly enough, mushrooms are not plants or animals. They're a hybrid between the two. So they've created a new level there. And they're more animal than plant. They actually breathe in oxygen, breathe out carbon dioxide. They have a very complete form of protein. But you start looking at the fact that we have more than half of our DNA is, do they say it's identical or profoundly similar to mushrooms itself? So, we're getting something that the body is familiar with, that works kind of like we do, and for over 5,000 years has been touted as something that, 5,000 years ago was reserved for kings or queens, right? So they knew way back when it was really, really good. Now we have over 3,000 published medical studies. And here's the strange thing. Most of them do not address the fact that it's a perfect food. They address the things that you're talking about, those 430 unique molecules that can alkalize and kill MRSA and block replication of HIV and H1N1 and even the most recent virus, right? That was proven by March 2020. It was pretty good for that. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, good nutrition in and of itself, but also good medicine. And they're really both blended into one.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit about your story. How did you find Reishi? Why did you become a doctor? What's your story behind this?
Oh, that's a long story. But first, growing up, my parents, wonderful people, brilliant, but my dad got a factory job when he got out of the military, and that was in the 1960s. And my mother got a union job, and they both made a fair amount of money, even though they were brilliant, but they were big fans of higher education. So they said, no matter what, get a good education. So growing up, my dad said, son, you should be a doctor. And I asked my dad, I said, Dad, why would I ever be a doctor? I never had a doctor visit that I enjoyed, you know? And so it never really went into my mind. So my first degree is electrical engineering, but I got hurt in engineering school. I was playing football and I went to a chiropractor and he made such a big difference for me so fast. I started thinking, wow, maybe there's something to this. And by the way, I'll tell the deeper end of it because there's such a lesson in this. So one, when I went to the medical doctor, he gave me muscle relaxers, painkillers, put my neck in a brace, my arm in a sling, and that was about it. I did not read the medication. I was a irresponsible patient, but literally I took opioids and muscle relaxers and went out and I had one drink, and I fell asleep behind the wheel of my car at 55 miles an hour.
Oh.
Now my date grabbed the wheel, thank God, pulled over and said, I'm driving home. And I picked up that bottle of pills and I realized, whoa, it says don't mix with alcohol, don't operate heavy machinery. I flushed it down the toilet, and I went back to the gym. I was a gym rat back then. And I said, okay, I'm going to rehab myself. Well, the gym owner said, look, you look like you've been hit by a truck. I said, yeah, that's about how I feel. He says, you need a good chiropractor. And I didn't even know what chiropractor was. But when I saw Mike Wickers in 1985, I mean, he made such a big difference in my life. I started thinking immediately about being a chiropractor. But here was part of the big thing. One, he helped me really, really fast. But back then it was $12 a visit.
Wow.
So picture. So I told Mike, I said, look, and I needed, who knows, I'm going to need a dozen visits. And I said, I don't know how I'm ever going to afford this. I'm a broke college student. And here's what he said. He said, Bob, I realized that if I take care of my patients will take care of me. I don't care if you pay me $1 a week. And I thought, isn't that interesting? He really cares. He's really talented. He explained to me what was going on and he made a big difference. So I sent him hundreds of patients and decided to become a chiropractor. And that reminds me of BJ Palmer, who was the developer of chiropractor. He said, you may never know what you may think, say, or do and how it affects the lives of millions tomorrow. I've lectured all over the world. I promise you that visit with Mike Wickers has impacted millions, at least indirectly. But when I was teaching a seminar in my hometown, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, There was another chiropractor that was right down the street from Mike. And she said, Bob, I wonder what would have happened if you came into my office that day. And shouldn't we all have that awareness that every interaction with every person every time has infinite potential for better or for worse? So why not optimize every interaction with everyone every time, at least as best we can?
Yes, beautiful. That's really well said. And so you went to school, you became a chiropractor. You work with such a diverse amount, like populations of people. They say these days you have to niche. You have to pick a type of person that you like working with. Why have you kind of kept this really broad range of people that you tend to work with?
Well, it's probably one of my weaknesses and strengths at the same time. I would get very, very bored, I think, if I only had one demographic. So I've treated world champions from every major professional sport, Hall of Famers from every Western sport. I don't have a Hall of Famer in soccer just yet. But and I guess maybe we consider that Western sport. But, bottom line is I get more personal satisfaction from the single mom who has a struggling child who medicine's not providing an answer for. Who do I want to help? Everybody. Who's most satisfying? Well, I tell people I treat the world champions for my resume. I treat everybody else for my soul. So I had a couple of single moms in today. I have a special place in my heart for single moms. And when you can help them, and sometimes with a very simple change, like changing their coffee or tea, right, get a better life for them and their family, that's what it's all about. But I have not niched down, probably because I think a niche would be boring. I like the chronically ill. In fact, I love all my patients, but I like turning those cases around. We've seen people, sent to hospice that got out and they're alive decades later. So, I
Wow.
tell people if you have a pulse, you have a prayer. Medicine might give up on you, but I'll never give up on you.
Yeah, I love that. I also really love working with the complex cases because you're right, there's so many people that will turn them away. And even I was originally a therapist first, and even that model is designed to work with the least sick person for the longest amount of time. Because the hardest cases are going to be the complex with the medical issues, with major mental illness diagnosis, schizophrenia, bipolar, and those people are stuck in the system because there's nothing else but that crisis care. There's nobody else that feels competent to blend, the mental, physical, emotional all in one. So
I
that's
want to
kind
make
of
a comment. I want to make a
yeah.
comment on that. So, as part of my education, I spent 3 days working at the state mental hospital.
Hmm.
And number one, I was beyond aggravated at the lack of nutrition, right? Their four food
Yes.
groups were sugar, drugs, processed foods, and maybe caffeine.
Oh
That's
yeah.
they didn't give them anything that served their body, mind, or spirit at all. Uh,
Hmm.
then they were constantly drugging these people. And I remember I was there to study, right? And someone said, "Oh, you're going to love this nurse. She's the best at giving out drugs." And it's like, okay. And she was good at giving out drugs, but do you want that to be your claim to fame? And she'd go up to everybody, how are you? How you feeling? Did you want to hurt anybody today? Did you want to hurt yourself? Here's your drugs. And she had a good attitude about it. I love that she worked to make people feel better. But I asked her, I said, does anybody here ever get better? And she sat back for a moment and she said, I don't think I can think of anybody that does. They're
Yeah.
either in there for life or they go to prison, or they're killed or they commit suicide. So how broken is that system? It's beyond broken. And what you said is you want to take the least complex case and extract every penny from them. Did I hear you say that? Treat them as long as you can, every way that you can to get all the money that you can.
Yep.
Clearly, we can see that that does not seem to be, if we want to be good for society, I don't see how that guideline gets us there.
Right. Well, that's just my opinion. Of course, nobody ever says that. But if you think about people in therapy, it's people with depression, people that are functioning, anxiety, PTSD. It's the people that do well in therapy or stay in therapy long terms are the people who, are not at the end of the spectrum, like schizophrenia, bipolar, complex medical issues that also need looked at. So, just that's why I got back into working with the physical, the emotional, the energetic, and moved out of traditional therapy because I was like you said, I worked in psych hospitals. This is barbaric. This doesn't work at all.
When I saw them taking kids, literally in whole groups, getting them and then injecting them with sedatives because they were acting out, I said, something is very wrong with this circumstance. But while we've got on the brain, one of the things I tell people is the brain is the most nutrient dependent, energy dependent, stress vulnerable, and toxin vulnerable system. So why would we go to a toxin first to address the brain? Now, as a therapist, thank God you were talking to people, right? Cognitive behavioral therapy is good, giving good advice, having a friend, that has extreme value. But if you don't have the right nutrition, if your brain is not making energy, if you're under a lot of stress, and if you are full of toxins, and that probably describes almost everybody, it's impossible to have a brain that works ideally well. So we address those factors and we give ourselves a mental edge as well as a life edge.
Yep, absolutely. And that's why I went back to school and got out of that system because I was like, this doesn't work. There's so much missing here. So
Amanda, I want to say one thing about that too. So in 2021, 117,000 medical doctors walked away from medicine here in the US. And
right?
I've podcasted with a few of them that said, I couldn't do it anymore. And
Yeah.
they went back and started studying functional medicine. So you technically, did you go back to a university or did you go to like functional medicine academy, or what did you do?
Yeah, so I went back to school. It was 2017. It was a master's program in functional medicine and human nutrition. It's out of University Western States. It was like the only one I could find that was a master's, 2 years, that had the content that I wanted. So it was.
How diligent for you to seek and find it. And I haven't looked to see what's out there, but I bet there's going to be more and more and more and more and more coming. So good news, because the world needs all the help it can get. I was on a plane and I was flying to a conference where I was teaching functional medicine. And I was working on my presentation while I was there, and the guy next to me, very brilliant guy, you sit next to this interesting people in first class. And he said, that looks very, very fascinating. We had about a 15-minute conversation. And he asked me, he said, his statement was something like this: this seems to be all the answer that healthcare is looking for. Why are more people not doing that?
Right.
Doing this, right? And first, I'll ask you that, and then I'll tell you what my answer was to him. So why do you think more people aren't doing functional medicine?
Yeah, well, for one, they're not taught it. They are either not sick themselves, they go to become a doctor and they are taught acute care. They don't get any training on prevention or reversing disease, just managing it. So there's a disconnect with like our education system. And then the second part is, functional medicine is becoming more mainstream now when it just kind of means the root cause, right? But there's still a lot of stigma, I think, attached to the alternative medicine crowd, even if it is research scientifically backed, like studies on reishi, they're just not learning that. And there's a lot of that, like, this is woo woo, it doesn't work. Chiropractors are scam artists, that type of stuff is still in the medical model as well, too. What was your answer?
Well, I told them that very, very simply, it's complicated, to a certain degree, and they'd have to go through a whole new set of education. So basically said the same thing. Now, could they have learned functional medicine in place of medicine? Sure. I'll tell this story. In 1994, I was lecturing at University of Texas Medical Branch in downtown Houston about alternative medicine. And I was given 1 hour to talk. And Amanda, when I was talking for that full hour, talking about natural medicine, I did my best to not say anything bad about medicine, to honor the people and the building that I was in. But at the end of an hour, the next instructor that had that lecture hall came in, grabbed my microphone and said, "You're done, leave." He didn't like what I was saying. But the students followed me out in the hallway and they had so many questions. I got another classroom. We used that until someone took that classroom, got another classroom, used that until someone took that classroom. And then, me having been there 2 extra hours, I ran out of time before they ran out of questions. And I asked this question. I said, so what is it about this topic you found so fascinating? I will never forget their answer. They said, you're talking about health. We don't talk about that here. And I said,
Mm.
what do you talk about? And they said, bugs and drugs. Well, are those important? Sure. But here's what I can tell you, far less than ever before. One, we've all got bugs. Testing is somewhat better than that. In terms of drugs, okay, fine. We can match lab parameters with AI and pick the best medication for a patient in a matter of moments. That doesn't currently, I mean, that's all automated. But what's not automated is connecting with that patient, having a heart-to-heart connection, soul-to-soul connection, which I think is most important, sharing hope, and then strategies, not just to give you a pill to get you out of this acute problem this second, but to give you a strategy to create your best life.
Yeah.
And, sometimes, no, I'll say the majority of the time people come in to me with an acute circumstance, but once we give them the option of creating their best life, there's plenty of people that say, you know what, I want to do that. I want to create 50, 60, 70 more epic years. And they might say that when they're coming in at 50 years old. If they come in at your age, who knows? They might get 120 extra years.
Yeah. So walk us through, like, when someone comes to first meet with you, what are some of your big pillars that you're like, this is how you're going to create that wellness?
Well, first and foremost, we want to understand that patient, right? So I have extensive patient paperwork that might take 45 minutes to fill out. If someone just strained their back, they say, I don't understand why I need to fill all this out. And I'll say, you might not need to fill it all out today if you're in acute pain, but what I'm all about is helping people to achieve their best life. And the more I know about you, the more I can dot the I's, cross the T's, and prevent a problem. When you start taking a family history and, if there's dementia running early in the family, if there's breast cancer, if there's prostate cancer, if there's diabetes, if there's obesity, if there's autoimmunity, you start looking and saying, okay, this gives us some clues. This is prevalent enough in your family that it's on our radar. I think we need to pay attention, and here's how we pay attention to it. So first and foremost, very, very, very thorough history. Secondly, once they fill out the history form, I'm going to look through it, and then I'm going to ask appropriate follow-up questions. That's going to be important. We ask them about all their symptoms. We ask them, what do you eat? What do you drink? How often do you use the restroom? How much do you exercise? What type of exercise do you like? Do you take supplements? What do you want to do? Would you like to have better body composition, better skin, better hair, better fingernails, better breath, better digestion, better sleep? And I'm shocked at how many people check nearly everything on that list. Would you like, yeah, they want it all. Good. I want them to want it all. And I want to create a path for them to get there. But in 1989, there was an article published in the Archives of Internal Medicine called The Deadly Quartet. Now, I'm going to make fun of this article because it was ridiculous. They said if you had a big belly, high blood fat, high blood insulin, high blood pressure, you were going to die early. And they weren't wrong, but none of those were causes. Those were all effects from the real deadly quartet: stress, toxins, malnutrition, and physical inactivity. So if you ask what are the pillars, I've got an epic stress reset that I do with people. I've got an epic intense detox that we do with people. We're always addressing nutrition, one, by stop putting poison in your body. If God made it, it's okay. If man made it, stay away. And then targeted clinical nutrition, because there was an article published 2008 at Journal Advances in Therapy. They found out that people are so depleted that food alone will not replete their nutrient status. And then physical activity. Why are people not physically active? They might be in pain. They might not have energy. There's so many different factors there. So I let them know, we want you to move every day to your tolerance, but ultimately we'd like to get you moving like a champ. Wouldn't it be great if we could get everybody moving around like an elite athlete? So those are my 4 major pillars. And I'll tell you what, I don't mind working on all 4 simultaneously, because that's where miracles happen.
Oh yeah, you absolutely have to. You have to ask them, do you go outside? Are you looking at your phone all night? Those types of questions that they may not connect the dots, that doing those things are what's causing the stress in their body, which causes the depletion, which causes the toxicity. And even just little tweaks like that, or, what are you thinking about all day? Are you ruminating on your problems 24/7? That downstream is going to cause all those problems too. So we really do, no matter what like type of practitioner or clinician you are, if you want to help people, you have to look at everything. There's no way
Amanda,
around it.
with your background in therapy, so when people are ruminating on their problems all day long, do you have any hacks to break that pattern?
Oh
Can you?
yeah, absolutely. So I do a lot of what I call somatic therapy or mindfulness, just a blend of kind of all the things that I've learned. And really it comes down to this very simple framework: awareness of what's happening either in your body, in your mind, awareness of some habit that is not beneficial to you. So whether it's ruminating on the problem or scrolling on your phone, you can't stop, or mindlessly eating, just bringing that awareness. Oh my gosh, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing it again. And then just by that, you're breaking that habit. You're interrupting that pattern. And then coming back to the body, noticing, how was I feeling? What drew me to doing this? Was I upset first earlier today? Was I bored? Trying to name the emotions or the emotional state you were in that led to that behavior or that rumination. And then you get to choose, do I really want to keep doing this? Because now I'm aware of it. So it's a choice. And so if the answer is no, then let's choose something else. How can I choose something that's going to be more in alignment with the person I do want to be? Not over and over and over, doing that over and over.
Yeah, most of us are in like zombie loops, right?
Yeah.
Groundhog's Day, they live the same day over and over and over again. The nice thing about Groundhog's Day is he ultimately got some consciousness and made active changes. And
I
maybe
love that movie. Yeah.
yeah, it's such a good story, because it just goes to show if you're aware and you have a plan, you can achieve almost anything. And he did that in almost every category of life: mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, social, financial, impactful. How wonderful. And we all have that potential every day. So if you want to live
Yeah.
Groundhog's Day, make it a good day, but somehow make it each day just a little better.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a great movie. And for the Gen Zers, go out, watch it if you haven't
Yep.
seen it before. Yeah, so incredible. So tell me now, let's get back to Reishi, because I don't think I know anyone that knows more about Reishi than you. How were you first introduced to it, and how did you kind of discover, all the potential that this medicinal mushroom has?
So about 35 years ago, when I was in school, I made a point of visiting every successful doctor that I could. And by the way, I had great mentors. So here's what I'll tell you. Um, I graduated second in my class in engineering school, but I never felt like a good engineer. And the reason was actually very, very simple. I didn't like engineering. Could I do the job? Sure. Would I put my heart and soul into it? No. And I think Steve Jobs said, if you want to be great, you got to love it. Period. End of story. So I told my chiropractor back home, I said, I want to be a great chiropractor. I don't want to be average. What do I need to do? And he said, Bob, that's simple. Learn from great chiropractors. I said, fair enough. Where, isn't that while I'm going to school? And he said, Bob, unfortunately, great chiropractors teaching at chiropractic colleges, he said, are few and far between. And you know what? I had a few, but let's just say I won't name them because then that would disqualify those that weren't great. But I love all my instructors. They were all good, but some of them didn't succeed in practice. So he said, ask in your community, find out who's doing good work, and then go visit these doctors, offer to clean their office or take out their trash or add value, right? Don't take, exchange. And so there were hundreds of doctors that I visited. And I would ask them, what is your one claim to fame? What do you do that's different? And everybody had a different answer. And the good news is everybody had an answer. So here's what I'll tell you. If you learn from 200 people that are doing great work, you have a much greater probability of doing great work yourself than if you learn from 3 people that are doing great work. But one of them gifted me a book entitled Reishi, King of Herbs. And he said, Bob, here's what I'll tell you. I have been using this as, a supplement in my practice for however many years he was in practice at that time. He says, I don't know if there's a single condition that it won't have positive impact for. I think after you read this book, you're going to find that that's true. And so I read the book. I was a very good student. And I thought, holy cow, that makes sense. So I started putting my patients on a reishi tincture. Now, reishi is horribly bitter. And, people would take it and they would go, I don't want to take that. And, my comment to that was, listen, if it'll kill a bug, it can't taste good. Right. And I would get them to take it. But as soon as they were done with whatever they were dealing with, they'd stop taking it. And I used it mostly for infection back then because it's powerfully anti-infective. Well, I come to learn that later that it's anti-inflammatory by more than a dozen mechanisms. It's the most alkaline food on the planet. It does have all of the fabulous 50. It's an universal immune modulator. It's anti-aging, and those things are proven in the peer-reviewed medical literature. Mice, they put them in a cage, and every part of their environment was controlled. Those that got reishi lived 9 to 16% longer. I'm sorry, it was 9 to 20% longer than those that weren't getting it. And so what it said within the article, if this translated exactly to humans, it'd be 7 to 16 extra quality human years. So, I used it initially for infection, but then I was introduced to it in coffee and tea, organic reishi, infused in coffee and tea. And when I first heard about that, I thought, I don't want to ruin a cup of coffee. I have almost like a morning ritual with coffee. I had great organic coffee when I was going to Starbucks. I was going to Starbucks. If not, I had my own organic French press. I wanted clean water, pure water, great coffee, everything else. And I thought, I don't think I want to change my coffee because I love my coffee. Well, I had my first cup and I thought, come on, is there even reishi in there because it tastes so good? And reality is there's other reishi coffee companies. They don't taste anywhere near as good as ours. So we'd have two different patented processes, and we're the premier company in that game. So full disclosure, I'm an investor in that company, you know? And by the way, I think you use it too in your practice space, right?
Oh, absolutely. I'm one of those people who generally does not respond to almost anything. Like when I was really, really sick, literally nothing I did for probably 2 years moved the needle at all until I found King Coffee. And within 5 days of drinking it just once in the morning, like not even a full packet, the rashes got better that were on my skin. I almost was like, this is magic. Like, what is going on? I started passing tons of candida, tons of parasites, and I hadn't changed anything else. And I was like, this is the most amazing thing ever. Because if I'm noticing a difference, everyone's going to notice a difference.
Yeah. Well, and how awesome is that it didn't take much and it didn't take very long. But here's what I'll tell you: for people that are very in tune with their body and moderately healthy, that's the experience. We got a whole bunch of people within one cup. They say, "Whoa, something's different," right?
Mhm.
What's different? I don't really know. What are they feeling? People feel clarity. They can see better colors. They hear better sound, more distinction between pain in certain joints can go away. I've given plenty of talks on Ganoderma, and I had a guy in my audience one time. He was kind of holding his head like this, and I'm a compassionate soul. I just stopped what I was doing. I went up, I put my arm around him. I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "I'm not okay." And I said, "What's going on?" He says, "I have horrible migraines right now. I've got a 10 to 10 migraine." Well, the International Journal of Pharmacology used these exact words: Ganoderma lucidum, also known as reishi, by the way, can completely eradicate migraine without side effect in the majority of patients. Those are the language, International Journal of Pharmacy, 2012 publication. And so we were there, and I said, "Look, I'm very, very sorry you have a migraine. Can we do an experiment?" He said, "What kind of experiment?" I said, "I want to give you a cup of coffee and let's see if it gets better." In 15 minutes, he had total relief. Now, we're not going to make a claim, even though International Journal of Pharmacy can, right? We have this weird world, and I see it changing, by the way. We can't make a health claim on anything that's not a drug. And Amanda, I was at a chiropractic philosophy seminar, and there was a guy way back when. His name was Reggie Gold, and he got himself in trouble because he'd tell people that chiropractic could grow an arm on a one-armed man. But he wasn't lying. In his experience, the person he knew was born with a very pinched brachial plexus, and they had a withered arm on the side of the pinch. And when they were very, very young, whether it was a few months old or whatever, they got the nerve pressure off and the arm came back. So
Wow.
it was an extreme exaggeration, but it wasn't a total lie.
Yeah.
So it helped very, very tremendously. But Reggie Gold asked this question. He says, "What if we took uh, perfectly healthy people and we started giving them drugs? What would happen?" Well, they become less healthy. And then he said, "Well, okay, why do we give then people who aren't healthy drugs and expect them to get healthier, right? And so bottom line is, sure, drugs have value, but lowest dose, shortest duration is the guideline. But what always has value, I tell people, if we compare man's pharmacy versus God's pharmacy, we start with food, which can be very, very nourishing, and in a nice way. It just moves the body forward. And in fact, I think I'm going to explain this 4 ways. So one of my favorite lecturers is a guy named Dean Black. And he said, if we want to give substances to help people, we can give whole substances or we can give isolated substances. So a whole substance could be a food, an isolated substance could be a vitamin or mineral. We could give nurturing substances or we could give controlling substances. So a nurturing substance would be a medicinal herb. A controlling substance would be a drug. And he says very, very simply, if you need to control physiology to save a life, do it. That's what drugs are all about. If you want something that's not quite as controlling, but can become very powerful, do a medicinal herb. If you need to get isolated substances to bring back balance in the body, use specific vitamins and minerals. And if you want to nourish the body, use food and medicinal herbs. And I really like that. So, drugs, shortest dose, lowest duration when you need to control the circumstances, natural molecules every other time. Now, are there herbs that can kill you? Sure. Not that you or I would ever use in practice. But when people are having challenges with natural substances, it's usually a quality problem. There was contaminated batches of tryptophan years ago, and for a period of time, I think the FDA banned tryptophan, and it had a poison within it. So quality matters. If we give people what they need in the highest level of quality and consistently enough, I believe that miracles can happen, frequently, and we see them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And especially with herbs. So there's the problem of like heavy metal contamination going through China. So you really want to make sure, where did this herb come from? What soil was it grown in? All that stuff is really important.
Not just the herb, but so for instance, again, we use reishi infused coffee and tea. So we test every raw material for herbicides, insecticides, fungicides, molds, mycotoxins, heavy metals, microplastics. And if anything fails on a raw material screen, we reject everything. But the producers of those foods, they don't throw them away. If you had pallets, hundreds of pallets of raw materials, and someone says, I can't take that, it's got heavy metals, you don't throw it away. You take it to the person that doesn't test. And, unless it's just so profoundly contaminated that nobody would take it, what happens is it ends up in the food chain. And then people are getting these toxins. And what do we see? We see obesity, we see diabetes, we see autoimmunity, we see cancer, we see heart disease, we see depression, we see bipolar, we see anxiety, all at record rates. And the reality is they all can respond beautifully to natural protocols. And you and I have seen all the above do that many, many times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So give me like a rundown of the people or the conditions that reishi is like the most impactful for.
Oh, God.
I know it's a long list.
Most impactful for would be anybody with a pulse, right? If you don't have a pulse, I always tell people, if you have a pulse, you have a prayer. By the way, I did have one dead patient that I brought back with CPR. So maybe you don't even need a pulse, right?
Wow.
That was very, very, very surreal.
Impressive.
But, well, thank God for good training and just being the person there at the time. It's pretty fascinating when you have a dead patient that comes back to life. I don't know if you'll ever have that experience. I hope you don't have the opposite experience, right? But dead coming back to life, that's a very good circumstance. But one, there's nobody that's not good for. And anybody that wants to up their health game can do it. Anybody that drinks coffee or tea, I tell people they should drink ours. Any kid should drink our hot cocoa. But let's just start out with each demographic, right? So kids, we see a lot of kids with brain challenges, especially attention deficit. But we have a hot cocoa that has a mega dose of reishi in it. And we've had people, we literally will have the parents say, okay, today I want you to take a hot cocoa instead of an Adderall, and let's see what happens. And then they ask the student, how was that? And they'll come back and say, wow, I had a great day. And when parents go to parent-teacher conferences, they say, yeah, I don't know what you're doing, little Sally or little Johnny, but oh my gosh, they're so much better. Well, instead of giving them an amphetamine that zombies them out, we're giving something that balances their brain. So Ganoderma reishi is good for GABA for calm, dopamine for focus and joy, serotonin for happiness, and acetylcholine for memory. So very good for that. So let's go with kids. I would go with any type of brain injury.
Yeah.
Let's then go to puberty. We've got girls developing too fast and boys developing too slow. And that's because they're being poisoned by estrogens and plastics, estrogens and pesticides, estrogens injected into animals. They have these terms xenoestrogens, metalloestrogens. Every man, woman, child on planet Earth today is estrogen toxic. But it's in those years where they start seeing the hormonal challenges that the teens could benefit again from mega doses of reishi. So for instance, I had a young lady come in, very bad PCOS, which stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome. That's usually insulin resistance, which causes the ovaries to make more androgens. Beautiful young lady, but at age 14, she was already growing a mustache. She had like male acne and very hairy forearm and hands. Well, she's going to need electrolysis for that. But in a very short period of time, we did change her diet. I'm not a one-trick pony, but the reishi got rid of her PCOS. But here's the thing. It is proven to clear these xenoestrogens, metalloestrogens, and even help our body drive the liver enzymes to clear our own estrogens. And by the way, men and women make it. Now, when
Wow.
we get to young adults, what do young adults want to do? Well, if they're in college, they want to have focus and concentration. And we're proven for that. If they're in the workforce, they actually want to have energy. So this is proven to actually enhance mitochondrial electron transport chains and mitochondrial electron function. So what that means is mitochondria make 94.4% of human energy under ideal circumstances. We make those better. We make all of energy efficiency better. So in those thriving years, right, why not give them even more energy? For people that are stressed out of their mind, people that consume Ganoderma fall asleep faster, sleep deeper, longer, wake up more refreshed. That's proven. That's in PubMed. It's a universal immune modulator. The Journal of Autoimmunity says it can be used to treat and or prevent autoimmune disease. It prevents blood clots associated with heart attack and stroke. It's proven against 16 different types of cancer. That's right out of the medical literature again, and I believe it's one of the best substances. It's proven to actually enhance the killing effect of chemotherapy while protecting normal cells, enhance the killing effect of radiation while protecting normal cells. In fact, just today, I had the daughter of a 90-year-old man with lung cancer who was going downhill fast. Where his tumors were, they did some very targeted radiation and a lot of it to get him to come around quick. And he's only done a few weeks of it and better response than they ever imagined. And we're doing mega doses of reishi. So within a few weeks, his oxygen went from, did it go from 88 to 9, did she say 97? And he's no longer coughing up blood. That's a beautiful response. So you asked me, who would I use it for? Everybody.
Yeah.
And how would I deliver it? Coffee, tea, and cocoa, because that's the most consistent way for people to get it. Or we have capsules. And I will often have people dose. I tell people bodies respond to frequency, duration, intensity, quality, and time of stimuli. When we want fast change, we dose things every waking hour. Now, with God's Pharmacy, you can do that because it doesn't hang around the body a long time. It doesn't become toxic. I promise you, you couldn't even do that with an over-the-counter aspirin. If you
Oh,
took
no.
aspirin every waking hour for a couple of days, you might bleed to death. So our stuff is profoundly safe and profoundly effective.
Awesome. Yeah. And some of my favorites, my audience might be more of the histamine intolerance crowd. And
Yeah.
reishi is fantastic for the liver, the gut, candida overgrowth, and antihistamine. And then you already mentioned that it's such a powerful and antioxidant, but then also helps with the acidity in the coffee too. So people are like, oh, I can't drink coffee, the acidity or the anxiety. It's excellent for that.
Both. So yeah, good thing that you call that out. So one, we have two patented processes, one which optimizes the nutrient delivery, and the second actually alkalizes the coffee beforehand. And there's plenty of people, they love their coffee, but their coffee doesn't love them.
Yeah.
But let's take another step to this. We start looking at the world, unless people are getting a very tested crop, which there aren't many. When they randomly test the coffees of the world, half the coffee of the world has molds and mycotoxins. Then you start looking at, unless it's organic, it's probably got the herbicides, insecticides, fungicides. It most likely has heavy metals as well. And so if people are doing 2 cups a day, like you said, you did one. The average coffee drinker in North America drinks 3.3 cups a day. In Finland, they drink 9 cups a day. But imagine 3.3 times a day, you're getting molds, mycotoxins, herbicides, insecticides, fungicides, microplastics, hormonal disruptors, multiple times a day, or something that makes each of those better. So instead of taking a tiny little step backward, you take a step forward and you take enough of those steps. At 2 cups a day, that's over 700 cups a year. Hey, 700 micro steps forward is a lot more effective than 700 micro steps backward. Now let's multiply that over a 40, 50-year life. You can see where this could add so much value to so many people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned also the capsules and your stress reset protocol, the HPA access protocol. I am such a huge fan of this. I've done it 3 times. One time I did it for over a month. And I cannot tell you just the difference that I was feeling after like a really high period of stress or something major happening, or even because I dealt with chronic illness, there were some periods in that time where it was just like, I need a break. Like I need to not feel so stressed out 24/7. So tell us about that protocol. And one of the biggest questions I always get is this okay to take this much? Is it safe? Which you kind of already mentioned.
Yeah, well, so this is a protocol that's evolved. So I happen to think that stress is the number one killer on planet Earth and probably always has been. We go to the medical literature, they'll tell you 75 to 90% of all conditions that we'll be seeing any doctors on any given day are stress related. It took the medical literature till 2022 to create indisputably the link between chronic distress and cancer. Because it's a major enemy of the immune system. That could be chronic infection, that could be autoimmunity. There's so many things that happen. But the stress reset, I was at a conference probably 25 years ago, and a global endocrinologist got on stage and said, we found something interesting. We see that the adrenal glands have melatonin receptors. We don't know what to think about that just yet, but we're finding it to be interesting. So I thought, why in the world, melatonin is made in our brain, why would our adrenal glands have receptors? Well, fast forward, now 2.5 decades later, we know that the gut makes 400 times the melatonin as the pineal. We know that melatonin is a universal mitochondrial antioxidant, mitochondrial aid. We know that it exists even in single-celled organisms, and they can trace it back, amazingly enough, 1 billion years. But when we take melatonin, one, it shouldn't cross the blood-brain barrier, so it shouldn't make us fall asleep. Think about it, 400 times the melatonin in our gut. If it did cross the blood-brain barrier, we'd be asleep 24/7. But when we take it, it binds to that adrenal glands and it prevents the brain drive of melatonin on the gut. Then we give theanine, an amino acid in green tea that does cross the blood-brain barrier, is a natural GABA facilitator. So melatonin calms the stress in the body, GABA calms the stress in the mind, and then we give the reishi spores, Ganoderma spores. Now the medical literature calls it the herb of spiritual potency. It actually drives the parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest, digest, recover, procreate. It lowers the level of circulating cortisol in the bloodstream. It crosses the blood-brain barrier, and it is a GABA facilitator, meaning that it calms the body, the mind, and the spirit all at one time. So when we put people on all three and we pull the plug on the stress pattern, I have people that have made the statement that they believe they would have been dead without that protocol. And I'll tell the story, and I'm doing a webinar with her tomorrow. Now, this podcast will be out where people aren't going to be able to see, but her name is Camilla Hiller. And she was a woman who was starving to death from gastric bypass. At one point, she was 450 pounds. They did what's called a Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. They took her stomach from the size of a soccer ball down, in her case, to somewhere between the size of a golf ball and a tennis ball. They made it really, really small. She lost over 200 pounds in a year. She was starving to death. And she had a very stressful life anyways. And by the way, there's a study, it's called the ACE study, ACE, Adverse Childhood Event Study. And they found out that these children that were so profoundly abused and beaten and sexually abused and you name it, they would self-medicate with food and especially sugar. And that was a part of this problem with morbid obesity. She had plenty of that in her past. But anyways, being in constant fight or flight for God knows what, 40 years, having her digestive tract ruined, I just looked at her, I said, I don't know how I can help you other than to try to reduce your stress. So let's try a stress reset. Well, it worked so well for her that she created stress reset drops. She actually hired a nutrition company to formulate melatonin, theanine, multiple different adaptogens, MCT oils, and 3 different forms of B12 in one formula. And then they take the reishi spores separate. Now, she did that for a reason. She wanted to make it easier to do because as a bariatric patient, taking melatonin capsules, she had to grind them up for absorption.
Mm.
Taking the theanine in capsules, or melatonin was tablets, theanine in capsules, she had to open that up. Even the reishi capsules she opened up. So by putting it in a liquid, she got it done. So which one did you do? Did you do melatonin theanine or did you do our drops?
Yeah, I purchased the melatonin theanine separately and then the spores. Yeah.
Yep. So I believe the drops are even slightly more effective, but the melatonin theanine combo, very, very powerful. I believe we now have FDA approval in the US. Those drops are available in Europe, although a lot of Europe has melatonin as a prescription item. You know, it's coming to the forefront that there's been a war on health. You kind of know that.
Oh, yeah.
But the world is going to begin to realize that a lot of things that were helpful for people were made harder to get, and things that were harmful for people were kind of forced on them. So this is quite good. I see it changing. If you listen, if you want to reach out to either of us and get the guidelines for a stress reset, it's literally as simple as 1 to 2 milligrams of melatonin every waking hour, 100 to 200 milligrams of theanine every waking hour, and then 250 to 500 of the reishi spores every waking hour for 7 to 10 days. You said you did it for 30. You must have been really in a circumstance at that point in time.
Well, I just felt like it was working so well. Like my HRV improved, my heart rate went down, my blood sugar got better. And I was like, I don't want to stop this. So I don't think I did it every waking hour. I started to kind of taper off, but I was still doing the protocol for, most of the day for at least 30 days. Yeah.
Good for you. Well, that is so impressive.
Yeah, and I've led like a group of people also doing the protocol, and I had some incredible testimonials about cholesterol and platelets and like all these lab markers improving even, and just again feeling so much less stressed, which I cannot even explain like how big of a difference it made, like on the physically, like looking at the Oura rings, the labs, but just at the end of it, you're like it's like you finally can breathe out. It works so well. Yeah.
Well, you know what? How wonderful that you had that experience, and also wonderful that you're sharing it. But most people have no clue how much tension they're holding,
Yes.
and how inefficient everything is, because their body is, and this is what the medical literature says, these are the exact words, many, if not all, New World primates, which is us, we are New World primates, have elevated cortisol and cortisol resistance. So this is a first do no harm strategy. And when we bring it in, all the better. Now I'm going to tell people quality counts. You know, when we start talking about reishi, you know, we are investors in the world's premier organic reishi company. And I'm going to encourage people, reach out to us. You can get a bunch of garbage on the internet. And the most expensive program is the one that doesn't work. You know, I listen, I've had plenty of people that I've done virtual consults with. I almost should make it a criteria. You must buy the nutrients, the ones that I recommend. You don't have to buy them from me, but buy the ones I recommend, because I've seen people that they could have changed their life with good recommendations, or good substances, but they pinched pennies, got ineffective stuff. In fact, we even had one person that bought stuff on Amazon. Amazon, it's estimated some of the stuff is fraud. Her baby ended up in the ICU because she wasn't diligent with her suppliers. So if you want to try this, reach out to one of us. That's what I'm going to encourage you to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned there's two patents on the infusion, what is it? The infusion process, and what's the second one?
Alkalizing the coffee. So
Okay.
coffee has more than 30 different acids within it. You know, and there's a high percentage of people that have acid reflux. It's almost like 90%, 80 to 90%. They can't tolerate coffee. But our coffee, because it's alkalized and also with the most alkaline food in the world in it, usually they handle the very first cup. And if they don't, you know, we have them take spores for a week, capsules. And I can't think of anybody recently in 12 years, actually, that after that couldn't handle the coffee.
I
Very
even
good.
had someone with a colostomy bag say that they can't drink coffee and that they can drink this coffee. So I
Yeah.
thought that was really incredible too.
Well, even though it still does the good things for elimination, you know, I had a guy that he says, Bob, every time I drink a cup of coffee, I have a bowel movement. Can I just take it in the capsules? I said, well, what makes you think it's a bad thing to have a bowel movement every time you have a cup of coffee? You know, listen, it might not be socially convenient every moment, but oh my gosh, if you're eliminating like that, you're ahead of most of the world. There's plenty of people, the primary job of the colon is to absorb. And if you keep substance in there too long, you're absorbing toxins and poisons and not doing your body any favors. That's for sure.
Yeah, true. All right, awesome. So we're running short on time. Tell us, like, what are your main goals? I know you have so much going on, and you are just such a light with like educating on all sorts of different topics. Where do you want to see the world going in the next year or two?
I'm excited. I want the world being more informed and empowered to make better choices. It's all about informed consent. When we, as a practitioner, we need to get informed consent. I wonder if they put on these ultra processed foods labels. And by the way, this was suggested over 20 years ago. Keep eating this, it'll kill you. They weren't going to put that on it. But there was a public health expert from Yale, David Katz, and he and I co-lectured at a conference. He said everything in the grocery store. He went to Congress and said, if it's unlimited, put a green sticker on it. If you want to be cautious with it, put a yellow sticker on it. If you want to be really cautious with it, put a red sticker on it. Well, when the supermarkets realized that, what was it, 98% of their stuff was having red stickers on it, they weren't going for it. And the fact that the government was subsidizing everything with a red sticker really sucked. But here's what I would like. I would like people to consistently follow people like you and me who are sharing truth and love from the heart for only one purpose: to help people find their path to their best life. I put a little Instagram video up yesterday about the most important decision you'll ever make. And it was after listening to an audiobook from a Holocaust survivor. This guy was over 100 years old, survived all the concentration camps, the worst torture you could imagine. And after his son was born, that was long after he was obviously out of the concentration camp, he decided to be happy. He said, you know what? I survived. My fertility was maintained. I have a baby. From now on, I'm going to count my blessings. I'm going to be happy. And you know what? I came to realize, wow, if a guy can make that decision and step away from all of that to the happy decision, and once you make that, if you're happier, will you likely attract a better partner? If you're happier, will you likely show up better and serve the world better? So I want people to make the happy decision. I want people to seek truth that serves them. And if it doesn't serve them, find a way to make it a non-truth. It's true that there are people doing bad things out there. Maybe we can make that a non-truth. Maybe we can find ways to empower them to find their heart and soul and make the world better. So my goal, I'm very optimistic. I think RFK is going to take big steps to make America healthy again. I'm ecstatic about it. Some people got upset with the elections. Some people unfriended me because they didn't like my choice. You know what? Let's not let that get in the way.
Right.
I love you, everybody out there. Some people I'm going to love from a distance. Some of you might love me from a distance, but let's keep that love intact, because that's ultimately what our world needs. If we have that, we got it all.
Yes. Very well said. Thank you so much. All right, Dr. Bob, let everyone know where to find you, where they can learn from you.
thedrbob.com, THEDRBOB.com, or like my Instagram, YouTube, DR_BOB_Rakowski, RAKOWSKI. I'm hard to find because I was so heavily censored during COVID.
I bet.
Maybe that'll change too.
Okay.
Maybe I'll be more findable.
I think it will.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Bob. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I am just so thrilled that you're listening to the Healer Revolution podcast. This has been a huge passion project for me and super therapeutic on top of that, helping me to use my voice and connect with other like-minded individuals. So if you're enjoying the podcast, please like and subscribe. Please share on social media or with your audience or friends or loved ones. I truly appreciate it. It does take a lot of time and financial costs to run the podcast, and it is not a moneymaker, let me tell you. So if you are enjoying this, I would truly appreciate your support just by sending me a post, a like, and a subscribe. Thank you so much.